I don't know if Connor Johnson is doing this for my benefit or to stir up things in the chat. I can't in any way forecast the Pac 12 being the best conference in college football and breaking up like a 15-year streak from the SEC.
Well, Connor, let's tackle that. I mean, I do think that the Pac-12 is going to have a really special season. Like right now, I can sit here and say, yeah, like we're going to have some 41-38 type thrillers. We're going to get several of those, whether it's Washington versus Utah or USC versus Oregon. There are just so many good games. There are 4 or 5 really good teams. I include, Connor, your Oregon State Beavers in that group. There's so many games that are just going to spill out and be just spectacular athletic festivals with elite quarterback play, veteran quarterbacks, veteran skill players coming back for another year. The Pac-12 is set up to have some great games. Now the important cautionary note is that while we're going to have great games, this is not a Pac-12 conducive to getting into the college football playoff. Like it's going to be hard for teams to go 12-1 against this schedule. It's going to even for Oregon with kind of the buffers between tough games. It's still going to be hard for the Ducks to go 12-1. Like they have to go to Seattle, they have to host USC, they have to go to Salt Lake City. So like the Oregon has to win 2 of those 3 games to be on course for 12-1, and then of course it'll need to win the Pac-12 championship game. So like the Pac-12 is going to have several really good teams. I think that's the point of agreement we can make. But in terms of getting to the college football playoff, that's something I can't really be very confident about. And of course, that includes USC. And this is where USC's schedule really matters, because if USC, if we lived in an alternate world where USC was playing Utah in September and had a cushy game after Notre Dame, and before the Washington Oregon double stack, I would be singing a different song, about USC's college football playoff prospects. But this schedule is, looking just the mechanics and the framework of this schedule, it's not built to put USC in a 4-team playoff, and that's part of why the 12-team playoff is such a good thing. That when the nuances of a schedule work against you, like, last year I said USC was going to go 10-2, and I actually underestimated Lincoln Riley by a game. USC went 11-1 in the 12 normal game schedule this year, and I'd be interested to see what folks think about this on the Voice of College Football. But, if USC goes 10-2 against this schedule, that's really not bad. I mean, obviously USC fans so badly want to get to the college football playoff, and that is the expectation. That is the standard for Lincoln Riley to meet. But given this particular schedule setup, if USC goes 10-2, that's a lot of heavy lifting, because it will mean that USC will have won at least 2 of the 4 games at Notre Dame, home Utah, home Washington, at Oregon. I mean, splitting those 4 games is no joke. I mean, and it would be amazing if USC went 3-1 against those 4 teams. With this defense and the condition it's in, USC going 3-1 against those 4 teams, part of an 11-1 regular season, like that would be phenomenal. That would be absolutely amazing. And I think a lot of the USC realists, I know that they're not the loudest voices in the crowd, because it's always easy to be loudest when things fall apart, as they did in the Pac-12 title game, and especially against Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. But there are plenty of USC realists who, when Lincoln Riley came aboard, they were saying, hey, Lincoln Riley, great coach, absolutely amazing play caller. It's still going to take 3 years to really get the depth, to really get the bodies, to really get, everything turned around from Clay Helton. It's not going to be an absolutely instant fix. And, that has been one of the tension points among the USC fan base, that there were some people who felt, we can get this done in year 1, not necessarily in terms of the playoff, but in terms of winning the Pac-12. And, I think both sides really came out of this looking, fairly wise. I don't think one side conclusively won the argument because USC did overachieve relative to national projections, but on the other hand, those last two games really offered a sobering reminder of how USC simply did not have the dudes, the bodies, the depth on defense. And we can say that Alex Grinch didn't coach him up as well as he could have, but we know that he did not have filet mignon. He had sloppy Joe. He did not have the premium choice cuts available. Bill Parcells always talked about who does the cooking and who gets the groceries. Well, so the groceries weren't at the level needed for USC to serve a first-class defense to the opposition. So from that standpoint, the idea that this was going to take more than a little while, it was going to take more than just 1 year in terms of getting up to the playoff standard, that particular argument seems pretty on point. It seems to have held up fairly well. So if USC goes 10-2 and makes the Pac-12 championship game, but misses the college football playoff, we all wanted the playoff in year two, and I'll admit, I've said like playoff in year two was really the expectation that, not year one, but year two. Well, I'm not completely walking back that statement, but I will say this schedule makes me think that if USC can just get a Pac-12 championship from this 2023 season, 10-2 through the 12 games, and then you get the off week in late November and you win the Pac-12 title game and you go to a different New Year's Six Bowl, given this schedule and given just everything we know about the program, I'm not going to say that's a great season, because a great season means going to the college football playoff, but it will be a good season. And unless we see more defensive reinforcements in the transfer portal, to just talking about this roster, I'm prepared to accept an 11-2 Pac-12 championship winning season in 2023 based on the difficulty of the schedule.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And anytime winning a conference championship and finishing in the top 10 in the country is, I know that there's a few schools out there that's not good enough on an annual basis, but considering where USC is coming from, it's certainly, even if Lincoln Riley reaches the heights, that should be an acceptable season, even in year 7 or 8, if there are playoff seasons around it. You're not going to go to well, obviously we're going to be in a 12-team format at that point anyway, and in a different conference. But if there was a 14 playoff, nobody's making the playoffs every year. I will say, Connor, that the Pac-12 is not the best conference in college football, and it's most likely, in my estimation, not the second best conference in college football. It may be. We shall see them play out the games. I am going to estimate that it's going to be probably the third best conference in college football, as it was this past season.
Yeah, I think a couple talking points here. One is I think the two teams that are going to affect the two non-Pac-12 teams that are going to affect the how the conference power balance is, how the state of play in terms of national college football is in 2023 in terms of the conferences, Florida State and Wisconsin. Those strike me as the two teams which are really going to have a significant effect on how we rate the strength of conferences and the balance there. Because you look at what Luke Fickell has done in the offseason, getting Phil Longo as offensive coordinator. So like Wisconsin's leaving the Barry Alvarez, Brett Bielema Stone Age. It's going to be modernized offense at Wisconsin. So just that right there is a commitment to, the forward pass, which we haven't seen, in the past, for most of the past 30 years. Now you did have Russell Wilson flinging the ball around the yard a little bit, but for the most part, you've had, those Scott Tolzien, Darrell Bevel, those ball control game manager quarterbacks, Jack Cohn as well,
Sure.
So now at Wisconsin's entering a whole new era, and Fickell, we he's an elite coach, and Wisconsin getting him, like, that was a real coup. Say what you want about Jim Leonard, but like if Fickell was there, Fickell wanted to come, Wisconsin indubitably made the right hire there. So Wisconsin really could instantly push the Big Ten back up if you have that, along with Harbaugh and Ohio State, also in the conference. And then you go to all right, Mark, you wanted to say something. So before I go to Florida State, you want to jump in?
Well, I was going to say that Wisconsin doing what Wisconsin has done with those pedestrian type quarterbacks over the last 15 or 20 years has certainly served it well. Had they been uh, the banner, the flag what term am I looking for? The
Flag
flag
bearer.
bearer of the conference over the last 15 years, that would be a different deal. But when they're typically sitting in like the fourth spot of the conference and finishing in the top 15 in the country, they've been just fine.
Yeah, I mean they really slipped the past few years, but yeah, I mean they were like the 10-3 program that made a second tier bowl game below the top tier. But so the fact that Wisconsin wasn't at the place it's normally been, the fact that Graham Mertz, yeah, he got Paul Chryst fired and he prevented Jim Leonhard from getting the permanent job. Like that was an impressive coach killer season from a quarterback in 2022. So that's Wisconsin in the Big Ten picture. So then Florida State is really, I think, the most interesting team in all of college football.
Mm.
But that program is really going to have such an effect on how we view the ACC in 2023. Do we get back to the days when Clemson, Florida State, two powers meeting on the mountaintop, was a must-see annual event in college football? When there was a little window when we had Jimbo and Dabo going at it, and it was must-see TV. It was appointment television, heavyweight games. It didn't last for a very long time, but in that small window we had, that was such a compelling clash at the top of the ACC, and it made the other programs in the conference do better. It's kind of like Federer and Nadal, or Nadal and Djokovic, forcing the rest of the ATP men's tennis tour to be better. So, it's been Clemson and a bunch of dwarfs for the last several years, for the most part. Obviously, the last 2021 when Clemson slipped and you had Pitt and Wake getting in there. But, most of the time, of course, it's just been Clemson's world alone there on the summit. And Clemson drummed North Carolina in the ACC title game. So 2022 felt a lot like, the 2015 through 2020. But so can Florida State join Clemson and give the ACC two elite teams and create kind of an upward flow, an upward gravitational pull in that conference? So Wisconsin in the Big Ten, Florida State in the ACC, those are two very central case studies and teams to point to in terms of when we evaluate the conference power structure in college football. Those are two teams that are going to really have a significant effect on the conversation and how it flows during the 2023 season.